It's truly a pleasure to speak to you all tonight and share with you something that has been a major part of the lives of my wife and myself for 13 years, as Maureen pointed out. Notice the title, and I have Bluebird Restoration on there, but of course this is an author presentation. But if you look at the title, Learning to Think Like a Bluebird, two things are going to be obvious. At the end of the talk, all of you will be bird brains. That's a given. All right? But it is also, and for me, an humble statement, because we continue to learn as we work with our nest boxes. I do want to mention a few people before we begin the regular lecture. Helping out at the first part of this effort was John Shippey. He helped me put them in. John Munson, of course, was up here just a moment ago. John helped build boxes. He helped at the first with financing. He suggested that we ask people to yearly support the Bluebird box, a particular box. And we made our money that way for about 4 years to support the program. Doug Moore is a photographer at the university. Helped me with my photographs. Is Pat Brzezinski here? Pat, stand up. Pat Brzezinski has been a tremendous help, not only in putting boxes in place, but he was there for every nest box building. And we built 3,900 over a 6-year period. So that was substantial. Thanks, Pat, so much for your efforts. But the person who stands head and shoulders above the rest is Bob Lane. Come on, Bob. Stand up. He was second in command. He helped design several different styles of boxes. He has helped me with everything from black-capped chickadee devices to woodpeckers to raccoons. Bob has done it all. So he is in second place so far as this whole program is concerned. Couldn't have done it without him, and his lovely wife Chris is here as a monitor as well. Do we have anyone other than Maureen that is a former monitor? I didn't see any, but I wanted to bring out that in case they were. We still have very many active monitors, 76 in fact. Sue Hall, you saw earlier, my wife. She's been active for 11 years. David Becker, Dave, has been active for he and his wife Patty for 10 years. Joe Schultz, 10 years. Bob and Louise Durack, where you got it? Right here. Bob and Louise for 9 years. Bill and Jill Zier, back here. Hands, please. There we go. For 9 years. This is also a youth movement. And although Josh and Jen Rice, I didn't see them here, they take their children out. I believe Ben is 3 and Korea is 1. So that's hard to beat. Elijah Stacy is his mother, Grakowski, has been with us for a year. He's 9 years old. And Wendy Carlson is here with her daughter. I call her Princess Bluebird. Samantha, will you and your mother stand up, please? There you go. Thank you. Katie Kozak is with us, standing in the back, waving. She's been with us for 3 years. Katie is now a sophomore in wildlife biology. Brad Zinda has been with us for 6 years, and this is the youth movement. We've got quite a few kids involved, and we're so happy. Can I have then all of the monitors that are here of the 76 stand? If you please. forget Benjamin Anto. Craig, I forgot Benjamin. And let's see, are you a junior, Benjamin?
Sophomore.
Sophomore. Okay, I lose track sometimes. Oh, yes. We have a junior, Cassidy Crumble. Is that?
Yes.
It, oh, okay. Your partner is Diana over here at Brzezinski. Very good. Now, we monitor boxes once per week. We have an average route of 35 to 40 boxes per monitor. They send me the results. I write up a summary weekly. And what do we achieve? We share problems and experiences, helps us fine-tune our routes and maintain monitor motivation and morale. And it's helped us develop a real love for songbirds and the highest production vinny trail in Wisconsin and the U.S. right now. Also, during this time, we have helped restore the bluebird, and in that process, it has become the most successful restoration of a passerine or perching bird in Wisconsin conservation history. I'm very proud of that. These people have helped make that happen. As a group, we dedicate 3,800 hours per year, about 50 per person. We've had 280 years of experience, and really I've never worked with a group that I feel is more dedicated. So why monitor bluebirds? Conservation, I mentioned. Bonding with nature, especially children, is a big part of our effort, and it's also a portal to other natural activities. I point out Maureen, who was with us for 9 years, not that this necessarily was the only thing, but now she has served Audubon for 4 years as president, is very active in kestrel research, and I think that happens to a lot of people. So, it is time now to move the slides, my love. Okay, if we can have the lights down. Let's have the second one from the right, Jerry, on. Second from, whoops, then it would be the third from. Oh, that's it. Perfect. Okay. Now, what is it about a bluebird that is so attractive to people? It's knockdown gorgeous, for one thing. Okay, it is a beautiful bird, and in fact, I have looked. I cannot find any other bird that has more songs written by it. When I was a child, there was a Victrola at one of my friends' house. Remember the RCA Victrola for the trumpet? Yeah. And guess who I listened to? Jan Pierce, the Bluebird of Happiness. So that was a long time ago. How about what will be over the White Cliffs of Dover? Bluebirds over the White Cliffs of Dover. You remember that was a World War II song? Mr. Bluebird on my shoulder, is it true, it's actual? Everything is satisfactory. Somewhere over the rainbow bird is flying. So this is a very motivating bird. It's beautiful. And more than that, it is very accepting of disturbance. So you can get them to nest very close to houses and pay a lot of attention to them. This is Tom Cook's slide, a very rare slide of bluebirds in the rain. I promise not to break out and dance. Next. This is a picture by Doug Moore. Okay. And I wanted to point out here, I've got a little pointer here someplace. Not necessary. This young man right here is in the back of the room. Right here, he's a 6th grader, and he is, Brenda is helping us put in next a Trail for McKinley Elementary School. Now Brad is a freshman in college, wildlife major. He has already helped Gene Jacobs in his raptor workshop, and so there has been a tremendous development in this young man, and we're proud to have Brad as a monitor. So we're putting in the boxes here. We have 15 boxes at Kushikuski Park. That is McKinley Elementary. Next. And this is Faye, help me out. Faye Miller. At Roosevelt, we work with about 120 kids there each year. These kids are actually holding black-capped chickadees. And I want you to focus on that male. That male is not macho in that show. To hold the chick in your hands like that, I think, is supreme. And it helps kids connect to nature. And I'm so proud to be working. We're going to develop a trail at Madison Elementary this year. And Kim Marshall in the back. Kim, you stand up, please. Kim is a very special person. 4th grade teacher, Washington Elementary School in Rapids. And she has not only worked with her program of 7, 8 nest boxes around the elementary school, she now has put in camcorders, and those are streaming videos, and they can be seen in China if you want to. I mean, it goes out over the internet and really makes an impact. Last year she had both a tree swallow and a bluebird, so that was pretty neat. Here's Maureen with her son Zach, again building, working together for Mother Nature. And here's Brad again. He's already developed from putting it in the boxes to making it. So that's his father. And here we have a monitor at Fort McCoy. That's Tracy Woodman with her daughter Faith. She now has had 3 daughters go through the program, and she's showing the infantry persons what's in the box. All of these things, well, this is my wife and 2 grandchildren. So all of these are ways to connect children to nature. Now I want you to notice that this green area is a year-round habitat. Breeding in the dark blue is us, of course. Sometimes we get some overwintering bluebirds. In the southern part of the state, we have a woman who feeds them and has kept a small group of 5 in Green Bay now for 3 consecutive years. Next. So this time of year, they're ready to take off. They're ready to migrate. I wish I could say I took that slide. I didn't. I'm greedy. I'll take anything. But they are migrating, and I saw my first ones yesterday. Several people in the room have just seen them, their first ones, and so they're moving in nice numbers. Next one. Some of them get a little sleepy en route. Of course, that isn't sleep, that's just preening, but it looks like a good picture. I couldn't resist putting it in. Now here is the bottom line. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, the bluebird was on the way out. Out of about 96 breeding bird surveys, these are 25-mile long surveys, they found an average of only 1 or so for 2 years running. In 1986, the Bluebird Restoration Association took it upon themselves to start promoting bluebird boxes. We spread them throughout the state you can see that there was a tremendous increase over the next few years. So humans definitely played a part. Good weather played a part. But we successfully brought this bird back from the brink. Next. You can see that this happens to be the statewide data. I have collected that for 9 years. And we have certain periods where the spikes were new national records. 1, 2, 3, 4, especially 2012. And yet the last 2 years, you can see it's been very flat. Weather plays a huge, huge part in that outcome. The main competitor of bluebirds is tree swallows. You can see there were about 11,000 tree swallows statewide. Around 9,000 boxes. Next. Here are the data for Audubon. You can see back in 2012, an exceptional year, we produced 6,758. Our total is about 45,500 out of 59,000 total birds raised. If you put an S box out, you should be able to get a songbird. This past year, we lacked 3 boxes out of 1,354 didn't have anything in them. So everyone in this room has a good chance of getting a songbird of some kind if you put it in the right habitat. House sparrows are a problem. Here are our totals. You can see it's been fairly flat since 2010. That is dependent upon how many monitors you can get. It's very difficult to recruit monitors and get people that are dedicated enough to stick with it. And so instead of continuing to expand, we've tried to level it off. So note that in 2013 and 14, the total production was well down from 2012. And think about it, the last 2 winters before this one, snow was on the ground, very cold, and so the birds don't come back until they can find a habitat that is decent. And they won't nest until they've got insects nest. So consequently, the number of bluebirds produced per box went from 5 to about 3.3 and 3.7 in the last 2 seasons. Now we're starting out exceptionally well, with this exception. We lack moisture. So unless we can get some moisture that will develop insects, the birds won't come into the boxes. We're hoping that we get some rain soon. In 2008, the Audubon Society won the outstanding bluebird route for North America from the North American Bluebird Society, and you can see that little trophy right over there, in case you want to look at it. And this is the group that held up their prize that evening. Next. So this is summertime. Notice what happens in Wisconsin. They invade Wisconsin, but largely it's the largest concentration are in the west. That is the driftless area. And the driftless area is just exceptional for bluebirds because there is no competition from tree swallows. Tree swallows have to have standing ponds, lakes, and that kind of thing, and there are just not many. You've got streams, but that's not adequate enough for the tree swallows. So the monitors, I see some of them shaking their heads, Oh, that I could be in western Wisconsin. In the winter, the bluebird, the robin, all thrushes start to develop, actually it happens in fall, the intestines elongate. This allows them to eat fruit. So in their overwintering site, the bluebird ends up eating things like juniper berries and other berries to survive. There are spiders, not many insects, but they get along quite well. Next slide. And this is catch-22 in the overwintering habitat of the bluebird. They live in an area that is prone to ice and snow. Think of the eastern Wisconsin weather, eastern U.S. weather this year, especially the Gulf, along the eastern seaboard. And I'm worried. I think that we're entering a time like we saw in the late 70s, early 80s, where we ended up with a tremendous drop in population of the bluebirds, and that was traced back to difficult weather, severe weather in the overwintering habitat. Well, the bluebird not only has trouble in overwintering habitat, it has trouble here. If it comes back too early and gets into the nest box and doesn't have food available, here you have it. So this was just the boxes that I monitored on one day in spring, and the number of bluebirds we found in. No other species that competes for our boxes has that combination. House wrens, they live way to the south, Mexico, and they don't have any problem with snow. Okay, tree swallows are far enough south that they usually get out of that kind of climate. Black-capped chickadee just stays with it. They're here all year round. So it is a bluebird that is most vulnerable, and they're the ones that end up needing the most help. This is Katie Kozak's shot. Katie has turned into a great photographer. It's rare that you see a bluebird coming out of a cavity. The advertisement for this meeting, Jerry Jans had a great shot of an adult feeding chicks, but that is a rare exception. So Katie, nice job. So here's the relative abundance of all four species that tend to get in our boxes. Okay? For every bluebird, there are 2.46 chickadees in 2006, 2.2 in 2010, and you can see the swallows and house wrens. All three of these drop, and that means there are more bluebirds in proportion to these species. So that's a good thing. It shows that the bluebird over that 4-year period was increasing in population. So, let's look at the natural history of the bluebird. Here's a bluebird. Basically, if you listen carefully, it sounds something like this. Come on to my house. I'm sure you will hear that. So that is a mating call leading to copulation. And the hen, building the nest, she builds the nest almost exclusively. They can take up to 1 to 2 weeks at this time of year. And in the summer, when they build their second nest, it can be done in less than 24 hours, we found out. The number of eggs, any place from usually 4 to 5 in the first nesting, can be 6, or next, can be really rare. This is 10, and bluebirds, so far as I know, all of the cavity nesters egg dump. Do you know what that expression means? Wood ducks well, often two hens will lay eggs in the nest, leaving one hen to do the work. And so that's what happened. Ends up, none of these hatch, but sometimes that happens. The different nest types, you can see red pine needles, 100%. And rootlets, that's a rare nest. You don't see many of those. And then horsehair, you'll find in some of the nests. So the hen does the incubation. She has featherless patches, called incubation patches, and they are hormone driven. And usually it takes her 13 to 14 days to incubate the eggs. All hatch at the same time. Now she's laying the eggs, one every day, but she doesn't start to incubate until they're all laid. So all of the chicks will hatch at the same time. That's very convenient because then they tend to fledge at the same time. The same is not true of raptors. And I show this because the hen has more blue on her than you would think. Sometimes you see her fly away from the box and they're very blue. Next. And this is Tom Cook. I show you his rain photograph. And he was pretty amazing that he tamed bluebirds like that. Seriously, it's a Photoshop. He was good at that. You never know, do you? White eggs. Albino eggs occur 2 to 3% of all of our eggs. They seem to hatch adequately. We don't know any advantage or disadvantage to them. And this is extremely rare. In the Bahamas, bluebirds exclusively lay their eggs, hatch or chicks, in nests like robins. Okay, open. But bluebirds are cavity nesters here. And this is, I guess, enough cavity that it worked because they raised 2 broods out of that as a flower. A plant. So what we have here is, keep it going. They're hatching. See the chicks hatch. And the first thing they do is gape. Those that gape, feed, and those that feed live. So that's a very important capacity. Laura Hagen did this for us, this video. No reason why it's not working. There we go. The female broods the young for about 10 days. For 7 days, she is the only source of heat. So she is very critical to the survival of those young. Dark nest box, it helps to have a colored interior to the mouth. This allows the hen to pick out the ones that are feeding. And this is what they look like as soon as they hatch. It's rare that you see them hatch in the nest, but it's also quite an interesting experience. The chick, all bird chicks, have two stages of hatching. The first stage is going into the blunt end of the egg that has an air sac. They then breathe the air and develop their lung breathing. Then when they come out to the air, it's not as big a transition to breathe the 100% air. And again, gaping is an important part of life inside the box. And Sue and I were so impressed with that that we sent out a holiday card. The devil made us do it.
Were they singing Deck the Halls?
He's my straight man. Okay, and once you have chicks in the nest, there's a fecal sac, and that must be eliminated, or the nest will get stained and dirty. So here you see the fecal sac being taken out, and it is gelatinous and holds in place, so all of the waste can be removed at one bound. Here are the chicks right before fledging. Here's a recently fledged chick. Often the chick is heavier than the adult. That's one good reason to use an oval rather than a round oval, because sometimes they're so large that they can't get through that round hole easily. Not often, but it's something to be concerned about. Chicks love water, so if you have a water bath in summer, even in winter, it's a great thing. Now, the biggest competitor is the tree swallow. The hen on the left, on the right, tremendous flyers. Barn swallows will fly from the pampas of Argentina clear to North America. That's 6,000 miles. So their flight is many hundred miles a day often. My wife came home one day and said, hey, instead of the normal 6 or 7 eggs in my tree swallow nest, I have 9. And I said, oh, that's nothing. I had 10 once. You know, husband, wife, and next slide. This is hatching tree swallows. Next slide. She comes back and she says, now I have 9 chicks. And I said, now you've got my attention. They ended up fledging. And I write, the leading tree swallow expert in the state, and he emails back and says, your wife has a new state record. Now, first of all, I had foot-and-mouth disease, right? But living with a woman that has a state record. I need a commendation medal for that. Anyway, she still got it, too. Whoops. Let's stay here. Now, here's something interesting. The top chick is a week younger than the bottom chick, and this is tree swallows. I've seen this only one time. They will tend to be 2 or 3 days difference. Now, one almost wonders whether it's a tremendous number of eggs that they've laid or what. Anyway, this is a very, very rare slide. The nest, and you can see all of these nests right over here. We have the nest and eggs for you to look at in here in case you want to do that. The tree swallow nest always has feathers. Okay, so they line the nest with feathers, except this one. So there is a cheap substitute for feathers. Right there. They pick cellophane. One woman showed me a slide, and it showed one of these pieces of cellophane, and it says made in China. These are the things you find when you do this. The chickadee is a great species, of course. Just a delicate nest. It lines it with fur. It can be a variety of fur. Sometimes they will use styrofoam insulation. Usually they make it of moss. Next. And here's egg dumping on the part of the chickadee, usually only 7 or 8. As I recall, Benjamin, you had a 9 chick nest fledge, which is very, very rare. And I believe that was true for the Carlsons, am I correct? And I had one. So last year we had 3 9-chick black-eyed chickadee nests, which is extremely rare. Now here's something Brad Zinda ended up documenting. It must have gone something like this. First of all, the bluebird comes in and lays an egg. Perhaps after the chickadee has made its nest, you can see more typical moss there. And then the chickadee lays the eggs. Now, what makes you think that bluebird egg would hatch? If that bird laid it and it didn't incubate it, it will stay for 10 or 12 days cold until it's incubated. Next slide. Can you tell which is a bluebird? So this is extremely rare, of course. Next. And Brad called me and said, "What do I do?" This is what we put over the chickadee box, over the opening, to prevent the larger birds from going in and predating them. It works very well. And I said, well, just take this off. And sure enough, it fledged. But somewhere, somehow, there is a bird, bluebird, going, chickadee. The house wren, ounce for ounce, most impressive bird out there. It is unusual. Now here's beautiful eggs, brown eggs. Notice the feathers that surround them. They make nests of sticks almost completely. And for a change, it's not the female. The male carries all these sticks and puts it in the nest. And sure enough, the female looks it over. You know, they select maybe 4 or 5 boxes that they're putting these eggs, these sticks in. And the female selects the one that looks best to her. You can see perhaps the chicks here. It's very difficult to shoot chicks of house wrens. They're very jumpy. I've had the entire nest explode and fledge right on the spot. If you don't take care of that, what will happen next? They are an egger. So they are building a nest on top of bluebird eggs, light blue, and they will take out every egg in their territory. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a cardinal, whatever. So they're very difficult to combat. This is the evildoer, the one that predates our songbirds. It produces a beautiful egg. Remember, it's an exotic species from Europe, so it has no federal protection. It may be protected in your mind, but it at least doesn't have any legal protection. This is why we don't like it. Decapitated tree swallow. Chick bluebird, all 5 of them killed, only one was photograph. Now, how do you combat the house fly? Ideally, you would keep them out of your boxes. This box was built specifically to exclude house sparrows. We have found no way to keep them out. So if they go in our boxes, what we do is trap them. We said, we'll trap like this. Okay. And you're looking at the front of the box. If the bird goes in and trips it, that's what you see. You know when you've captured some bird, and usually it's the house bird. So, whereas they used to be a major problem for us, we can trap and dispose of these birds now very successfully. Over 90% of our house sparrow occupied boxes had songbirds produced in them last year. So if you go after them, you can control them. Now here's some common myths. I can erect bluebird houses and leave them alone without monitoring them. And people think of that as responsible. In fact, it is irresponsible because you don't know but what the house sparrows are trying to occupy the box unless you look inside. I should not disturb nesting bluebirds because they will abandon their nests, not so. Bluebirds, in fact, are very tenacious. And a minor opening of the box will not make any difference. And I can give you some really ridiculous examples of why I know they won't abandon. Well, I guess I just as well say one of them. One fall, I was changing boxes. So I often change boxes that don't have any birds in them. I started talking to the landowner and didn't look inside the box because I was sure there wasn't anything in there. I go 15 miles to Clover to put the box in place, okay? And suddenly I hear, cheep, cheep. I open it up, and it's 5 beautiful 10-day-old bluebirds. This time, the box goes in the seat next to me, seat belt. I tossed it in the trailer and hadn't paid any attention. So I go back, and I really had a guilt trip for sure. And I saw both adults still on it 3 hours later. Okay, I put it in, and sure enough, they took it over. Now we know enough that we can get the birds. If you go to a box, when you touch the birds and they're cool, you're sure they've been abandoned. I mean, really cold. If you move them a little bit and they still have some life to them, then you've got a chance. Because they've got to be able to gape. That's the key. So you warm them up. I won't tell you everything I do, but I usually use a handkerchief and just warm them up. And then, as I'm monitoring my boxes, I come to one that has chicks about the same age, and and finally I have no more chicks, because they're all being adopted by hens. Now, if that hen had a smell problem, she would take that animal, take that foreign chick, toss it out of the nest, right? No, she adopts it. We've had 86% success in adopting our chicks that way. So I'm just using this example to show you how false modest disturbance is. Next. This is the key. 90% of your success is where you place the box. Okay, next. So you need a territorial area of 1 to 3 acres. You've got to have some feeding habitat. Next. Because these birds got to have perch sites. These birds are perch feeders. And you can see flycatch, hover, walk clean, perch to ground. This is by far the most common feeding. Now the robin feeds on the ground. And I saw 5 groups of robins yesterday. They're back in numbers. They have a different forage style. But the bluebird has to depend on the combination of what insects they can find and fruit now. And so they're not back in the numbers. They won't get here in numbers until things improve in weather next. So this is my habitat along Highway 54. You can see my box up here. Notice that this is about a 50 feet mown area that the birds can see the insects. They must have short grass, that's the key. Short grass, perch sites for feeding. You've got the wires, they love the wires, they love the trees. Here are some more open areas that they can find insects, and that is the key to success. One year, we reached 92% of all of our boxes occupied by bluebirds. Think of it. And you should be able to do the same thing for any of these species if you put them in the right habitat. The chickadee would be pine trees, concentration of pine trees. The wren, low shrubby habitat. Tree swallows, water. So you want ponds and that kind of thing next. So once again, short grass, a lot of perch sites. They could use these clotheslines of this tree. And the tree becomes important because the adults tend to fly in and look around for predators and then go to the nest box. And the young, when they fledge, have to have some place to fledge to. So you have to have trees in the general area because, when they fly, it's first flight. And typically they won't go more than 100, 200 feet. Now boxes, very interesting. You put them out, and you don't know what you're going to get sometimes. So this is the Zers. This is at St. Bronislaus. And this is their picnic. And that's an F-150 truck. Have you ever seen any problem with that? What is it, a picnic of some kind? Usually you still fledge, do you not? So another example of minor disturbance not being a problem for these animals. Next. This was a little bit more than minor. When we put it out, there were no beehives there. And so we lost the chicks in this particular nest. Next. And this was an interesting one. Notice the worn area. We now have horses in here. Horses when we started. Next. The horses would push this over. I solved that by putting a tire over it. Okay, and then they would get close enough. Ended up having a triple out of this in those circumstances. And I want to pass this around at Fort McCoy. It was just sent to me today, and this is an example. They have prescribed burning, and here's one of our boxes escaping the flames. Spacing, extremely important. Next. Now, for a bluebird, they're territorial. So you get those boxes that close together, they'll compete. You need them spread out. If you're after bluebirds, if you're after tree swallows, this is a good combination. Good combination. But our good friends over in Minnesota haven't learned that. You can put, in this room, you could put 40 boxes, okay, 40 nest boxes in this room. All would be occupied by tree swallows in the right habitat. Okay? But the problem here is, their reasoning is that if you put 2 boxes pairing, tree swallows will take one, bluebirds will take the other. Doesn't work that way. Usually swallows take them both. So next. So more is not better when it comes to bluebirds. You've got to spread them out at least 100 yards. Direction of the opening, I just mentioned that. Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology has demonstrated that the further north you go, the better it is to have the boxes pointing toward the northeast. That's where the sun comes up. The sun warms the box apparently and helps the hen incubate the eggs. If I had the lights up, Jerry, please. Now I have two box types here, and the boxes usually go about 5 feet high. And you see this is an aluminum predator guard. And here is a plastic predator guard, otherwise known as PVC. And we attach by using two lag bolts. That works quite well in most circumstances. But sometimes the wood is thin. For example, today we have boxes that are cedar, and cedar will split on them. So this is an alternative in putting clamps on them this way to hold them in place. This comes in 10-foot lengths and can be cut down. Okay. Now lights, please. So this is how we mount them. You see the light bulbs here. Next. Don't put them on wooden posts. First of all, it's illegal to put it on electrical posts. But the cats and next raccoons can climb these no problem. So here, let's go back. And here is our little raccoon friend. One time we thought all we needed was a predator guard. They can climb that PVC. Now it's going in and it's pulling out. You see the egg? Right there. They have such delicate paws that they're amazing. Up lights again, please, Jerry. Sorry to work you. The raccoon has continued to be a problem for us. At one time, the aluminum and the PVC were structurally strong enough, and maybe I say they had not weathered. When they started to weather, we think that the raccoon was able to get up them more easily. Not only that, when the raccoon walks through, they're active at night, so they walk through moist grass, and they touch sand, and then that sand is a good gripper. So here is the latest effort, and Bob is once again coming through helping make these. This is called the Noel guard. And so 2 people have used it in the state and used it successfully. We hope the carts end up using it successfully also, several of us. And in fact, we had the worst raccoon predation last year ever on the boxes. So that's what we hope will So here we are. I mentioned the nest boxes we built, 3,900 in 6 years. And what happens if you have a deep box is the bird tends to build a deep nest. Up lights again, Jerry. Sorry. And we'll keep Jerry awake if no one else. Now there are several boxes that have been built. This is a building. Okay. And it's extremely deep. So at one time, the platform was down here. And that meant it was 9 or 10 inches below the hole. That won't work. So what they did, what we did, when we started this, is just put a platform that was elevated, and that tends to solve the deep problem. If you look at the book, at the boxes that we use, very simple box. But notice that the distance from the hole to the platform is very shallow. That's a key situation. But for a raccoon, not as much trouble getting down to it. So if you put that extension on it, they can't do it, we think. These boxes, by the way, are 15 to 20-year boxes, cedar. They're available for $20. All proceeds to Bluebird Restoration Association. There have been a lot of interesting boxes. First of all, men have carpenter complexes. I don't care what you say. They're going to build a different mousetrap no matter what. Here's one called the Baldry House. And the gentleman built it not too deep. Plus, the top of it had an opening, screen. Now the reasoning was a house sparrow is more prone to rain than a mover. True. But I have found nests of chicks drowned after a severe rainstorm in these things. So it just, he had a fairly good idea, but it didn't work out. But I tell you this, around the Green Bay area, he put up thousands of them. And we have systematically removed them. When you put up nest boxes, sometimes you get surprises. So all of the nest boxes were like this, unpainted, except this one. When I came back a week later, not bad. Huh? Samantha, I swear to goodness, this is something you would do. Anyway, look at that. So that was a little joke that was played on me. I never did find out who it was, but it was good. I liked it a lot. Another problem we've had, we'll come to that in just a minute. Okay. So you want to have a shallow box, and sometimes the boxes have had mulberries fed, or in some cases, how many monitors have found cherry pits in their boxes? Really, everybody. Check it out. Next. Now, why do they feed cherry pits? We tried to document it for several years, but we couldn't see, first of all, cherry pits are there if you've got cherries, and some years it's not a good cherry year. Next. 263, trust me. And here is what they do. They eat them, and just like owls, they regurgitate them. This is a rare slide, folks. Taken by Jack Barthelmont in Beaver Dam. And it's not all fun. You'll find a whole series of chicks dead, and you don't know what caused them. Over at Fort McCoy, we're very prone to black flies. We now have a spray that we use, and we have just about eliminated the black fly problem. You don't have it this way. Black flies tend to be a problem in the western part of the state. Well, up lights, Jerry. I owe you, Jerry. We have had some of the worst problems with woodpeckers. Okay? And so, in several years, we went through things to try to figure out what to do. I said, okay, we got to keep them from getting in. So we took a solid one of these, Bob made, and put them over a lot of woodpecker boxes that had damage, little damage. You can see that they have damaged even this repair. You see that? That it's plastic. But when I put them over, this is what happened. I'd forgotten there's more wood on the box. So this is how we solve it. I mean, we solve it. You just use a wire to open your boxes. And we use a wire because often we open them up, and Good Samaritans would close them back. You know, people walk by the boxes every day. And so we wired them to try to get the idea that we're doing that on purpose. But I still found several quotes when I went yesterday. There's another. And that's all it takes. You're making a hostile environment cold, windy, and cheery. Next. Some very strange birds end up in our boxes. This is a red-headed woodpecker. I think the only one ever recorded in Wisconsin that I know of. White-breasted nuthatch. I don't know whether it was a screech owl or a sawwhite, but it was an owl of some kind. Somehow got in one of our boxes and used it as a roost. This is one of my favorite birds. The Zers have them. Great crescent flycatcher. So typically they lay 4 eggs. Beautiful birds. And we even have vultures attempt to nest. I don't think anyone took that. But we found a vulture on one of our boxes, and that's a carcass of a deer close. Any questions?
Do bluebirds lay eggs in the southern United States too, or do they all move out north?
No.
So
No.
some move out.
If you look at that map, the southern U.S. is the hotbed for bluebirds. The eastern bluebird is the state bird of Missouri, for example.
So they come down. They go down in the south in the winter, but some of them come back, but
That's right.
a lot of them don't ever go anywhere else.
That's right. Many of them are permanent residents. Any other questions? Well, very nice of you. Oh.
Kim, will the same pair, you said they're territorial, will the same pair come back to the same box year after year, or?
Typically they'll come, banding studies have been done showing that they'll come back within a month. Usually not the same box at the same site like robins. Any other questions? Oh, we got to do the drawing. We have one more?
This is my question.
Right.
Are there any birds that will
fires. Hairy woodpeckers and downy woodpeckers are two that commonly will use the boxes as a roost.
No, I don't check it. Mine's in my house.
But that, if you wire open your boxes, you take care of your mice. Several of my monitors' sex remain anonymous. Don't like mine.
Will they use a box after mice have been in it?
Excuse me?
Will they use the box after mice have been
Oh,
in it?
yes. Smells, not a problem.
Smells not an issue?
But, you know, there's, mice need quite a smell, there's no doubt about it. If you clean it out thoroughly, you don't have to scrub it out. The birds are pretty hard to bottle.
In regard to, can you fortify with mealworms under?
Yes, in fact, the yakushas are, where are the yakushas? They are past experts. They have little containers on top of many of their boxes, and they put in mealworms. You use dead mealworms.
That's where they kind of find food, they'll just throw a couple in there and they'll allow them to go cold. And they're wait for it.
I think, you know, that it is a good transitional food source. That is a good way to use it.
Bluebirds color change from
I'm sorry,
do the
bluebirds
colors
train.
of bluebirds change in winter, like the finch and color, bluebirds color?
They molt. They have 2 molts a year. They're not nearly, they're drab in winter compared to spring. But I got a charge of it, you know, bluebird I saw yesterday. He says, I'm ready, sister. Any other comments?
Do you want to remind Kent about why you shape the nest box narrower at the bottom than at the top? Isn't that something we should talk about?
The original Peterson box was narrower than the bottom. We made them shorter, as Ken said, but we also eliminated the slant to the front of the box and just made them square. A lot of that was because we could assemble them much faster. We have 3 jigs, and so we're making basically 3 blur, in each jig, we're making 3 bluebird houses a minute when we go to work. So
Well, then, I'm at fault. I didn't realize that you changed the
we
design.
don't use the Peterson.
I sat there with a fire extinguisher behind that. He was that fast. Okay, 2 things.
Don't let Kent near tools.
What does the date say on there? May what? Saturday, May 23rd?
Yep.
Saturday, May 23rd, we're going to have a field trip showing people the birds. We'll have live birds, at least 3 swallows and bluebirds. So you're welcome to go. Just put name and the phone number, and I'll call you. And this is an interesting little packet, Bluebird Restoration Association of Wisconsin. The interior, the centerfold, is all the bird species that we're talking about. On the back shows a developmental sequence of the bluebird, and on the interior you have how to build a nest box. So they're available for sale back there as well. Well, listen, Maureen's got some things to do. Stick around. You can't get rid of them.